Hey guys, I'm your host, Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to another episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Thanks to all of our patrons smashing our first community goal, this week we have a special hour-long episode to celebrate. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for your support. It really means a lot to me and helps me to continue making this show. And it's because of you guys that this week we have a special double-length episode. Thank you. So, let's get right to it. Our story for this week is a big one, and also one of my favorites in all the time I've been reading and translating Japanese creepypastas. This one's called Our Entire Class Fought an Evil Spirit. It may seem unbelievable, but this is a true story. I don't care whether you think it's fake or not, because even though it might sound fake, it's real. I've changed a few things here and there in order to protect who we are, but otherwise, this is a true story. The title states that we fought, but in reality, it was mostly us getting beat up. I've never written this all down before anywhere, so bear with me. First, let me tell you a little bit about myself and two of my friends at the time. There's me, a tiny second grader, dependent on friends in the wind instrument club. I'm a rather subdued existence in my class. I'm never teased, but I'm kinda looked down on by others. Then there's Hosoki, my friend since junior high. He's also in the wind instrument club. He's skin and bones, but really tall. Then there's Matsuzaka, a close friend I met in high school. He's the head of the science club. His face is kinda ugly, but otherwise the rest of him is attractive. So, regarding our school, it was just a regular old school you'll find anywhere in the countryside. There were 36 people in our class. We were a friendly class, the type that banded together to make sure we had a happy and safe school festival before the summer vacation. This all started about a week after summer vacation ended. Our class committee chairman was absent without notice. He was the vice captain of the male volleyball club, but he was popular and quite the serious guy. Even the teacher found it strange for him to be absent without letting anyone know first. And everyone started talking about whether he had an accident on the way to school. Then one of the popular guys was like, maybe he's cursed. Haha. That's stupid. Everyone laughed, but according to him, several of them played Kokkuri-san the night before, and the committee chairman was amongst them. When he finished, he said he wasn't feeling very well and went home. That's gotta mean he's cursed. Myself, Hosoki, and Matsuzaka weren't a part of the conversation, but we did overhear what they were saying. Isn't it dangerous if something like that goes well? We thought, and chatted about the types of things you might find on the Ni-chan occult forums. During lunch, the teacher called the chairman's house, but his parents said he left for school as usual in the morning. The class flared to life with stories of the occult. While they were telling each other scarier and scarier tales, I figured our diligent chairman had to have missed school for a good reason. On that note, the day ended, but the next day was no laughing matter. I forgot all about the chairman and went to school like normal. When I got to the classroom, however, the atmosphere was strange. Everybody was silent, and the few people who were talking were whispering with dark looks on their faces. Some girls were crying. I went and asked Matsuzaka, who arrived before me, what was going on. Apparently, the committee chairman died yesterday, he said, his eyes swollen with tears. My mind flooded with the previous day's events. The curse? I thought, but of course I couldn't say anything out loud. How did he die? An accident? I asked. I don't know. I just heard it when I got to class this morning, Matsuzaka said. Oh. Considering how much of a shock it was, I was rather calm. I was sad and upset, but the biggest question I had was, why? An emergency full school assembly was called. Of course, it was to inform everybody of the committee chairman's death, but not a single word was uttered as to how or why he died. Class was gloomy for the rest of the day, and I could constantly hear people sobbing. We couldn't focus, and with the teacher crying as well, she told us to study on our own, so nothing got done. During homeroom at the end of the day, we finally saw our homeroom teacher, who was missing all day. Apparently, he had gone to see the committee chairman's body. Of course, he didn't say anything about the cause of death. But then someone yelled out, "Why did he die?" Everyone started crying. It finally hit me that it was real, and I started bawling too. It was suicide. They also found a suicide note, the teacher told us, tears streaming down his face. Everyone was in shock. Nobody said a thing. The teacher wanted to say something, but in the end, he was crying too much. "Be careful on your way home," he said, and left the room. Club activities were suspended for the day, and everyone went home in silence. When I got there, my mother somehow already knew about what was going on. "I'm so sorry," she said. I cried in front of my parents. Me, a second-grade high school student. Class the next day was incredibly gloomy. During morning homeroom, the teacher told us, "Today is the chairman's funeral. If there's anyone who would like to go, raise your hand." There could be no more difficult thing to raise your hand for, I thought, but everyone put their hands up. The class split up and went in several teachers' cars to the funeral. I couldn't stop the tears once I got there, But after the funeral, I felt like I had the chance to say goodbye to him properly. We went back to school and returned to our regular lessons. The gloomy atmosphere remained, but everyone did their best to change the mood and continue as normal. Our class was left with a gaping wound, but we said we'd go forward, doing our best not just for us, but for the chairman too. But the next day, there was another accident. I was riding my bike towards school. There's this large bridge that I always cross, but on this particular day, it was closed. There were patrol cars and ambulances everywhere, and people looking around. I pushed through the crowd, thinking there might have been an accident, and someone said that a high school student had fallen into the river. I went as close as I could, and there were 2 bicycles there. In order to prevent theft, bicycles from our high school had a special sticker on them. I saw that sticker on both bikes. Not only that, each grade had a designated colour for their stickers, and the colour I saw on the bikes was the same as my own. My blood ran cold. I got scared and fled as fast as I could. By the time I got to school, rumours were already spreading, but nobody knew who fell. What if it was one of my friends? I couldn't even think the thought, and when I found Hosoki and Matsuzaka, relief washed over me. But Hosoki didn't seem well. He just answered everything with, "Yeah," and "Ah." Homeroom started as usual, but 2 students were missing. 2 boys from the baseball team. The teacher never said anything, but we all knew. They were the 2 who fell. Lunchtime passed awkwardly. Then our teacher entered after the 4th period ended. "I have something I need to talk to you about. You may already know, but this morning, 2 students from our class fell from the bridge. They both died." A few people started crying, but most were silent. Everybody knew. Then one of the popular kids, who earlier spoke about playing kokkuri-san with the chairman, screamed out, "It's a curse!" "What are you talking about?" the teacher said. "Myself, the committee chairman, and the 2 guys from the baseball club. We've been cursed. The chairman died yesterday. That means I'm going to be next," he replied. "There's no such thing as a curse." "But the ritual went perfectly." "Hey, stop saying such stupid things," one of the female students said. "Yeah, life is..." another began. "It's a curse," Hosoki interrupted. He stood up suddenly. The class fell silent. I saw it. I saw them fall off the bridge. A fell off suddenly and looked like he was about to go over, and when B went to help him, they both fell off." "That means it was just an accident. Why would that be a curse?" the female student said. I saw it! I ran over to the bridge when I saw them fall. And when I looked down, I saw a girl, Hosoki insisted. What are you saying? There was a girl in the water? Wow, you must have amazing eyesight. No, not in the water. She was floating under the bridge. A female ghost. The class was dead silent. I was dumbfounded. I had no idea what was going on. Don't say such stupid things, the teacher interrupted. There's no such thing as ghosts. Everybody, go home. Go and wait there. Whatever you do, don't go outside. The teacher flipped out, and just like that, the day was over. My mother was surprised to see me home so early. I told her about what happened, and she told me to get some rest. I went to my room and called Hosoki immediately. To sum up what he said, he was riding a short distance behind the two guys from the baseball team. One of them fell over and nearly tumbled over the edge of the bridge. The other went to help him, but then they both fell over the bridge together. Hosoki panicked and went closer, and when he looked over the edge, he saw a woman floating in the air. Then he ran. It was simply unbelievable. I mean, first of all, there was no way that someone would fall over on their bike and then fall over the edge of a bridge to begin with. I thought Hosoki was lying. I got so pissed off at the thought that I hung up on him. Then I called Matsuzaka. I asked him if he thought it was a curse, but he said that it had to be a coincidence. Rumors of a curse spread quickly, because the guys that played Kokkuri-san were dying one after another. But it was all a coincidence. As for the ghost Hosoki saw, it was just a hallucination. It's not that strange to think that someone who just saw two of his friends fall over a bridge might see a thing or two that wasn't really there. For sure, seeing something like that would leave you panicked. Thinking of it that way, I felt sorry that I got so upset at him. The accident featured on the news that night. They said the cause of the accident was under investigation. I later got a phone call saying school would continue as usual the next day. When I got to school the next day, no one was talking. Nobody was crying either. During homeroom, the teacher told us that the entire day was to be self-study, and we would be called in order to visit the principal's office. The assistant teacher sat at the teacher's desk while we studied in silence. There wasn't a sound except for the teacher calling someone to the principal's office, and the sound of students returning from there. Then it was my turn. I went to his office and my teacher, the principal, vice principal, and two older guys I didn't know were there. I sat down like the teacher told me. It was like I was being interviewed. Then the old guys introduced themselves. One was the mayor. When he said that, I thought that I recognized him from somewhere. The other was a distinguished doctor. First, the principal asked me to tell him everything I knew. I told him everything that had happened until that point. About Hosoki's story, and how Matsuzaka thought what Hosoki saw was just a hallucination. The doctor and mayor agreed with my story, even though it was second-hand. According to the doctor, everyone's mental state was exhausted after seeing their classmates die one after the other. Because these coincidences piled up, it lent credibility to the Kokkuri-san curse theory. He asserted, however, that curses don't exist. Our minds and bodies were tired, so he wanted me to rest over the weekend. Listening to him, I was relieved. So it really was all a coincidence. The mayor said he would do his best to make sure all of this didn't become a serious matter. He wouldn't allow it to interfere with our exams for the coming year. After everyone was called into the principal's office, the mood in the class lightened. Everyone was relieved to hear what the doctor and the mayor had to say. Only Hosoki remained upset. According to Matsuzaka, he was upset because everyone was denying that he saw something. We had to stand by him. Matsuzaka really was perfect in every way, but his face. He suggested the three of us talk before going home for the day. Come to think of it, the three of us hadn't had a chance to talk together all week. Seeing as we were all together, we decided to get together for a chat before going home. After school, we were told to go home early, but we stayed behind in the classroom and ate some snacks while we talked. Matsuzaka brought a mountain of happy turn for us to eat. We talked about how much club activities we'd missed, anime, and so on. We made an effort to talk about happy things. But then Hosoki started talking about the accidents again. I'm telling you, I saw something. It was too clear to be a hallucination. We listened to him, nodding our heads at the appropriate points. But something felt out of place. Even though we were the only ones in the classroom, it was still too quiet. Shouldn't we be able to hear something from outside? There were still a lot of people left at school. I looked around the room. Then, in the middle of the classroom, I saw a strange girl. I was so shocked, I couldn't say anything. I just mumbled pathetically. Then Matsuzaka and Hosoki also noticed her and froze. She was wearing a white shirt with a black skirt. Her eyes were abnormally far apart, and her arms were extremely long. She was staring at us, expressionless. I wanted to run, but my body refused. Hosoki and Matsuzaka couldn't move either. She took a step closer to us. "Run!" Matsuzaka screamed. My body finally agreed to move at the sudden sound of his voice. I flung open the window and fled to the veranda. I couldn't even look back to see how the others were doing. I just ran at full speed to the emergency stairs. I was so scared I couldn't think of anything else. Just before I reached the stairs, I felt something grab my left ankle. I thought I was about to die. I panicked. Thinking I wouldn't reach the stairs in time, I jumped over the veranda railing. Our classroom is on the 3rd floor, by the way. I really thought I was going to die. When I looked down, I saw the roof of a temporary storage shed. If I can just land on that, I thought, and then I blacked out. When I woke up, I was lying in a hospital bed, my entire body in pain. I tried to get up, but I was in too much pain. Not only that, for some reason, I was tied down to the bed. "Is anyone there?" I called out. A nurse came in and said she would get a doctor. The doctor took a look at me and removed the things tying me to the bed. "You're in the hospital," he said. "Do you know why you're here?" "I jumped over the veranda at school," I replied. "You jumped of your own volition?" "Yes." "You wished to end your life?" "No, I didn't intend to die." "Okay, I'm glad to hear it. You've taken a terrible blow from your neck to your waist. You've also broken all the fingers on your left hand, other than your thumb. But you're in a stable condition. Both will heal in time." The doctor explained to me what was wrong. Then my mother arrived, crying as she entered the room. "Oh, thank God, she cried, over and over. I felt bad. Apparently, 5 days had passed since I jumped over the veranda. My mother never asked me why I did it. She just told me to rest. I was troubled, not knowing what was going on very well. But suddenly, my left ankle felt strange. Concerned, I went to take a look and noticed a very clear handprint wrapped around my leg. But more than the handprint, I felt like I was being grabbed in real time. I was thinking that if I didn't do something about it, I'd be in trouble. But then Matsuzaka came to visit. He was clearly worn out, and his complexion was awful. I asked him what happened during the last 5 days. He started with what happened after that girl appeared in the classroom. After he fled the classroom, Matsuzaka ran to the staff room. Apparently, he didn't look back either. Once he got there, he asked one of the teachers to come back with him. When they did, Hosoki was passed out on the floor, not breathing. The girl was nowhere to be found. An ambulance was called right away, but Hosoki was pronounced dead at the hospital. It was death by suffocation. His own arm was unbelievably thrust down his own throat. I broke through the roof of the storage shed, and one of the students out for club activities found me inside. An ambulance was called again, and apparently I woke up once at the hospital, although I didn't remember it. I was so confused that I tried to shove my own arm down my throat. So they gave me a sedative, and I slept the rest of the time away. After that, the school was closed for a few days. It was Friday afternoon when I jumped. On Monday, with the mayor included, a special meeting was held with the parents to explain what was going on with our class. They supposedly said there was no bullying going on, and that what happened was all an accident. On top of that, Hosoki's parents didn't want his death to become a big thing, so if everyone could keep quiet about it, it would be greatly appreciated. His death was still under investigation. My mother asked about the curse, but the school said they weren't entertaining such thoughts. School opened again on Tuesday, but most of our class stayed home regardless. That morning, our homeroom teacher was found dead in his house. He was mentally broken. It was suicide. Then the next day, Wednesday morning, his wife barged into the school. She got all the way to our class, crying and screaming, "Give him back!" It became a matter for the police, and everyone was sent home early again. None of it was what I wanted to hear. Without knowing why, I burst into tears. I was in the hospital for the next 3 days, until Saturday. Numerous people came to see me while I was there. First was my father. The moment he saw me, he started screaming, "Why did you jump?" I explained to him what really happened, but he didn't believe me. He seemed to think it was bullying, and they were trying to keep me quiet. His last words to me were, "Don't do something to make your mother cry again." Next was our assistant homeroom teacher and vice principal. They wanted to know what was going on, so I told them the same thing I told my father. Then the vice principal told me about what was happening at school. It was pretty much the same thing Matsuzaka told me, but I also heard for the first time about how my father went nuts, yelling and screaming at the parents' meeting. The police, principal, and members from the Board of Education also came to see me. They wanted to confirm that no bullying was going on, and to hear in person what really happened. If the girl we saw was an intruder, then what happened was a crime. But there was no sign of the girl on the school gate cameras. They didn't want this incident to become a serious matter, so they hoped I didn't make too much fuss over it. Finally, Hosoki's parents and younger brother. "Thank you for being his friend," they bawled. I promised them that I would never forget him. Other friends and family also came to see me, but I'll cut them out for now. I heard lots of different things while I was in hospital. They temporarily halted lessons for our class and planned to start them again the following Monday. Then one of the girls had a mental breakdown and sent everyone photos of her slashed wrists. Several other students sent messages to the others in class saying they'd seen the female ghost. But what they described was nothing like what we saw, so Matsuzaka said they had to be lying. Or they saw someone similar and it was just a misunderstanding. But both of us really saw her, so she couldn't have been a hallucination. Supposing that she really was a ghost, Matsuzaka said, We would have to try to deal with her the best we could, not being ghost catchers and all. Then I heard that one of the girls in the class went to be purified. Her family paid quite a bit of money, but once it was over, she said she felt a lot better. I, meanwhile, still had the handprint on my ankle, and it was pushing me to the brink. Putting the problem of money aside, I was grasping at straws. I called the shrine where the girl was purified. Someone answered, but they said they were unable to perform a purification ritual at that particular time. The chief priest that performed the ritual was involved in a motorcycle accident shortly thereafter and was in the hospital with serious injuries. He was alive, but for the time being, unable to move. I got out of the hospital on Saturday. Both my back and neck still hurt, and my left arm was bandaged up. I could walk fine, however, so they said I would be okay to return to school. I finally went back home, and when I opened my phone, the first thing I saw was an email from the popular guy, the one screaming about a curse. It was addressed to everyone in the class. It contained the information about the ritual they performed. Oh yeah, ever since we saw that girl that day, he hadn't been back to school since. I won't write down all of the details of it, but in short, it wasn't Kokkuri-san exactly, but a variation of the game. It differed in that it wasn't just a spirit being communicated with. It was a god. Plus, it wasn't to hear about the future. It was a ritual to ask the god to grant a wish. First, they had to call the god. They did so by reading a poem and drinking sake. They then said what their wish was, and in exchange for having their wish granted, they would give something in compensation. It didn't matter what it was, but the more important it was to the person, the more likely the wish was to be granted. What they put out in compensation turned out to be nothing other than the committee chairman's soul. At first they were just joking around. Nobody thought it would actually work. Then the popular guy asked for his wish. I want an exciting school life, free of boredom. If the ritual was a success, the candle would go out. After they said their wishes, even though there was no wind, the candle went out. After he sent the message out to everyone, it was like a male festival. Some started blaming him. Others wanted to help. Others had questions they wanted answered. It was chaos. When he said, "I want an exciting school life free of boredom," what he meant was that he wanted every day to be fun, he explained. Instead, it turned out to be the worst type of excitement of all. Then people started saying if the accidents were happening because of him, then if he disappeared, everyone would be saved. In other words, they wanted him to transfer schools and disappear entirely, so everyone else would be okay. A few people protested, but in general, most wanted him gone. Then one classmate sent out a message. We're not going to get anywhere discussing this over mail. Why don't we all meet up somewhere? Everyone agreed, and we decided to get together the next day at school. After the messages settled down, I contacted Matsuzaka. I asked him if he'd come up with any ideas on how to deal with our problem yet. But the more he looked, the more he realized that dealing with it ourselves wasn't going to do anything. It needed a professional, someone who could exercise the spirit for us. With the help of our parents, we contacted absolutely anybody who seemed like they might be able to perform an exorcism. But pretty much everyone refused. It seemed that news of the chief priest who performed the exorcism of the girl of our class, and his subsequent injuries, had spread. There were a few places who said, "Leave it to us." But the price was ridiculously expensive, and they all seemed like frauds, so we passed. But Matsuzaka said there was still a way to deal with it. When I asked him what he meant, he said he would talk about it with everyone the next day. After that, we spoke about all the bad things happening, like why the girl appeared to us on Friday when there were so many of our other classmates around. Maybe it was because Hosoki saw her when he saw the two baseball guys fall over the bridge, we thought. If she appears before the last person that saw her, then the next person would be me, Matsuzaka said. Of course, we didn't know much of anything about the ghost, who she was or what she was doing, so we didn't really know what she would do next. All we knew was that from last Friday until today, putting the ghost aside, our teacher had died, his wife barged into the school, and because exciting things were still happening to the popular guy, the girl hadn't appeared again. Thinking about it, if exciting things stopped happening again, didn't that mean the girl would appear to spice things up once more? Matsuzaka sure was persuasive. Supposing that was the case, didn't we just need to make sure he kept having thrilling experiences? It would be difficult to keep up the same level as people dying, though. I accidentally spat out. I hung up the phone, feeling vague and confused about everything. I needed to think of a way to deal with this myself. First, all the exorcists had refused us, so there was no one I could ask for that. It also wasn't very realistic for the popular guy to continue experiencing new thrills over and over. The fastest and quickest answer was to have him transfer schools. But he said via email that it would be impossible for him to move. As long as he was in our class, that girl would continue to appear. Then he should die. Thanks to his messing about, even Hosoki and our teacher, who had nothing to do with it, had died. And Matsuzaka and I were going to be next. If he had to die, well, that was just too bad. That night, I didn't get a wink of sleep. And the sun rose on the day everyone agreed to meet up. I still wasn't recovered from my injuries, so my parents drove me to school. They were worried about me, so they said they'd wait in the parking lot until our meeting was done. The school lent us the conference room, so we didn't have to use our own classroom. In reality, our class was supposed to be off for the week, but we received special permission from the principal to meet at the school. When I got to the conference room, several people were already there. They were worried about me. Matsuzaka was already there too, talking to some other students about something. And just in case something happened during the meeting, a teacher was waiting outside the room. Then it was time to start. Almost everyone was there, but a few people said the girl who was exercised wouldn't be coming. The popular guy wasn't there either. One of the guys from the student council asked everyone to gather around. He was to act as the mediator. It's not his real name, of course, but I'll call him Takaki. Not long after the meeting started, everyone started to complain about the popular guy. Why isn't he here? How are we supposed to start if the ringleader isn't here? I mean, it'll all be over if he's dead, right? He should just die already. Various statements flew around the room. Thinking that nothing would get settled this way, Takaki yelled out, "The reason we've gathered here today is to discuss what we should do to protect ourselves. I understand that everyone hates him, and because of his prank, several classmates, and even our teacher, have died. But even so, complaining about him isn't going to get us anywhere. He may have just been messing around, but we need to come up with a solution." I don't remember exactly what Takaki said, but it was something like that. Then one boy raised his hand. "If we just kill him, it'll all be over, right? We can do it in secret." Several people agreed. It had to be done before anyone else was sacrificed. But others refused. No matter how much we hated him, we didn't need to kill him. If he just changed schools or dropped out of school, it would all be over. For sure, if he disappears, the chances of this all ending are high. But the risks of killing him are too high. Even if we do it in secret, somehow it'll come out into the open. Let's just treat that as one option and look for a more peaceful way to end this problem. Takaki skillfully summed things up. Someone suggested asking the school to force the popular guy to leave. Another suggested having the entire class exercised. Others wanted to continue giving him more and more thrills. Yet another person suggested everyone take their own precautions when dealing with the ghost. "So which of these is the best?" Takaki asked. Matsuzaka stood up. "So, the girl we saw was a god, right? I don't know what type of god she is, but apparently she'll grant your wish if you give her something in return. So, why don't we call her again? Tell her we're bored and request a regular school life." Everyone looked at him blankly. He started talking again. To sum up, first, regarding killing the popular guy. Like Takaki said, the chances of being discovered were too high. If we got caught, not only was it all over for our exams, our lives themselves would be done for. Therefore, it wasn't very pragmatic. Next, regarding the popular guy leaving school. It would be difficult to ask the school to force him to leave. Clearly something was going on, but it would be difficult to force him out over such occultish reasons. In that case, it would be better for us to bully him and make him leave himself. But there wasn't a lot of time for that. If things kept up with this rate, it was likely the girl would appear within the next few days and take another victim. If someone else died, class would be closed again, and there would be no way to keep up the bullying. We needed something with an immediate effect. Regarding the exorcisms, we'd already hit up everywhere we could, but everyone refused. That was over 200 places. If we started searching again now, and supposing we found somewhere that agreed, more victims were likely to surface in the meantime. Plus, it would cost money. And it's not like everyone's parents would believe that there was a ghost haunting us. It was unlikely this method would save everyone. Regarding giving the popular guy a constant, thrilling life, like he explained to me earlier, that was physically difficult. If he needed a thrill as big as someone connected to the class dying, it was impossible to keep up that level. Lastly, regarding individual methods to protect ourselves, Matsuzaka asked if anyone in the room knew of a way to protect themselves. Did they intend to just put out mounds of salt? Did they really think that they could take on a god that so easily killed its prey? High school kids with no ascetic practice stood no chance against that. By process of elimination, having him leave school was the best option. But if he did that, did it guarantee that the girl would also disappear? We couldn't say for certain. After all, it was just a theory that all of this was revolving around him in particular. It wasn't that strange to think that perhaps the way he phrased his wish wasn't just for me, but for everyone in the class. After all, it was true that everyone in the class was having an awfully thrilling school life. If that was the case, then what? Then we needed to get rid of the wish itself. Just call the girl again and have her cancel it. If it went well, then everything could return to normal. But while there were voices that agreed, others said that it would be impossible. How would we call her? Takaki asked. We do the ritual again, Matsuzaka answered. Supposing we do the ritual, there's no guarantee that the female god will show up again. What will we do if we call a different god? Someone asked. Then we'll ask that god to exorcise her, Matsuzaka replied. At this point, I had a question myself. How would we determine if the god called is the girl or not? You'll have to decide that yourself. I was honestly perplexed, but then I remembered something. The handprint the girl left on my ankle. You're connected to that girl right now. If she appears, there will probably be some type of change with that handprint. It may not be very reliable, but it's the best way for us to tell, don't you think? I wasn't very confident, but if we were going to go ahead with it, I'd do my best. After Matsuzaka was done explaining, the door to the conference room opened. The popular guy came in. "I'm sorry," he said, like he wanted to disappear. Several people in the room jeered at him. One boy stood up, walked over to him, and punched him as hard as he could in the face. He fell over, and another boy started spewing venom at him while he kicked him on the ground. The teacher soon came running from the hallway and broke them up. The popular boy said nothing. He just sat there, crying. "Are you okay?" the teacher asked and helped him up. "He doesn't need your sympathy," someone yelled out. "Help me," he cried. "We're the ones who need help. Why are you acting like the victim? You've already killed 5 people." "Hey, stop it," the teacher yelled. "Sir, it looks like he has something to say," Takaki said, indicating the popular guy. He let go of the teacher and walked to the center of the room. He stood there, bawling, and while he opened his mouth, he never got any words out. "We're the ones who want to cry. If you've got something to say it already, you piece of shit." The room was filled with cruel words. I felt bad for him. Over and over he said, "I'm sorry." He didn't mean for this to happen to everyone. He was only joking around when he did it, but now he was filled with regret. He was ashamed to show his face to the classmates and teacher that died. Everyone looked at him coldly, but then one of the girls said, "That's enough. What's done is done. Now, we need to think of a way to deal with this. Together." I couldn't forgive him for what he'd done, but I did feel bad for him because he didn't do it with ill intent. Somehow or another, people stopped blaming him in the end, and we started talking again. We told the teacher it was okay now, and he returned to the hall. It was less of a meeting and more of Matsuzaka's exposition time. Supposing we did the ritual, and the girl came, would it really be so easy to get her to abandon the wish? "We'll ask her to," was all he said. But the possibility of that happening seemed low. In any case, we would have to offer something in compensation again. Matsuzaka said it would need to be something worthy of her cancelling the original wish. I was doubtful that we could convey such a thing to a god, but everyone agreed. It's difficult to explain through words on a screen, but Matsuzaka had amazing persuasive skills. Even though we were talking about occult matters, he spoke and thought logically. The class was coming around to the idea of another ritual, but we hadn't decided what to put forth as the all-important compensation. "You can use my soul," the popular guy said, but Matsuzaka brushed him off. Supposing she took his soul and life returned to normal, there was no way he would be safe after that. And if he died, well, that wasn't exactly a peaceful school life, was it? and that would mean the god failed to live up to her end of the bargain. There was no telling what would happen then. But at the very least, we all had to survive long enough to reach graduation. But finding something that was as important as a human soul was difficult. It was a cancellation fee, so it didn't need to be something as expensive as a soul, Matsuzaka said. But at the same time, it was best to put out something valuable to raise our chances. Then Matsuzaka proposed something unthinkable. We were to split up 100 years of our lives between the class and use that as compensation for the god. Somehow or another, I gathered what he was saying, but at the same time, it didn't make any sense. He explained. There were 31 people in our class. Each person would submit 3 years of their lifespan. More people would be in agreement if the popular guy had to pay more, however, so his price would be 10 years. That would be 90 years for 30 people combined, and 10 years for him. Altogether, it would equal 100 years that we could use as compensation. One's lifespan might rank a little lower than one's soul, but as a cancellation fee, it's more than enough, Matsuzaka said. So, supposing I was to live until 100 years old, that meant I would die at 97 years old instead. Thinking of it that way, it wasn't a bad plan. If it worked, we could pretty much guarantee that there would be no more victims until we graduated. On top of that, we were high school students who couldn't even imagine 3 years of old age, so everyone jumped on board. We started preparations for the ritual right away. One of the girls' parents ran a liquor store, so we asked her to go and get some of their finest sake. Takaki and several of the boys went to get the candles and lighters needed. Those who remained followed the popular guy's instructions for making the Japanese syllabary chart needed for the ritual. Once everything was ready, we decided to do the ritual in the conference room. Everyone went their separate ways to get ready. I stayed in the classroom and watched them make the chart. I wanted to help, but my left arm was useless, so I sat in a nearby chair and watched. While I was watching them, excruciating pain enveloped my ankle. "Ah!" I muttered, and when I looked down, I saw a small, white hand poking out from underneath the seat, gripping my ankle. Even now, I still remember the feeling of all the blood draining from my body. I was so scared I couldn't look back, but there was no doubt about it. That girl was right behind me. My mouth opened and closed. I couldn't get anything out other than a few mumbles as fear gripped me. Then one girl looked over at me and screamed. The class went into a panic. I couldn't look back. All I could do was watch my classmates run around in confusion before me. Some tried to escape. Others fell over. Matsuzaka froze, unsure of what to do. Amongst the chaos, we heard one voice above all the others. "I hate you! Die!" the girl screamed, hitting the popular guy as hard as she could. Everyone froze. The girl that hit him was the gloomy chick with glasses. She was usually so quiet, with a small voice. Everyone was amazed at her sudden actions. The popular guy opened his mouth to say something, but before he had the chance, she hit him again. "Shut up!" As the atmosphere cooled, we realized the ghost girl was gone. We didn't know if that counted as something thrilling to the popular guy or to the class in general. But everyone was indeed shocked, and the girl disappeared. "Hurry up and finish getting ready," Matsuzaka yelled, while everyone stood around like statues. Not even 10 minutes had passed by the time everyone returned to the room, well, right away. Myself, the popular guy, Matsuzaka, and Takaki were to take part. Everyone else was to wait in the conference room. The popular guy took the lead. Matsuzaka and I were chosen because of our strong connection to the girl. If we were there, chances were good that the girl would appear again. Takaki was there to make up the numbers. Then we began. We lit the candles. While the popular guy offered the sake, he recited the poem to call the girl. He recited it over and over until she arrived. But there was no change in my ankle. 10 minutes passed, and then suddenly the air felt heavy. It wasn't just me. Everyone seemed to feel it, and then they all looked at me. But I still felt nothing in my ankle. We didn't know if there would be any change in my ankle when she appeared in the first place, but everyone in the room seemed to sense someone was there. "I don't know if it's her or not," I said. But it didn't matter. Whether it was the girl or a different god, our wish was the same. A peaceful school life. That was the plan all along, so we continued with the ritual without disturbance. The popular guy wished for a peaceful school life, and in compensation, he offered 10 years from my own life, and 3 each from each of the 30 people in the room, making a total of 100 years of life. If we succeeded, the candles should blow out. But instead, they bent in two, and the light continued to burn. What on earth had happened? Why did they bend when there wasn't even any wind? Ideas flew around in my head, but I had no idea. Before we were able to gather our thoughts, there was a fearsome scream, and the girl appeared in the middle of the room. But this time, she looked different. Blood was pouring down her face, and her clothes were stained red. She screamed and flailed her unnaturally long arms around. Even now, I still have dreams about her bright red bloodshot eyes, wide open as she screamed. She fell through the floor, like there was never a floor there at all, her arms waving about. It's a little difficult to explain in words, but it was like the floor swallowed her. Next thing we knew, the light on the bent candles had gone out. It looked like the ritual was a success. A few days later, with no proof that we successfully performed the exorcism, we went to a rather large shrine in the city. We told the head priest everything that happened, and voiced some of our concerns. First, regarding the girl the popular guy summoned initially. We thought for sure that she was a god. But having listened to our story, the priest suggested that she was actually a powerful evil spirit. Having gone so far as to take a soul, she might have been an evil spirit aiming to become a god. Even if she wasn't a god, she acted as one to grant the popular guy's wish, but because she wasn't really one, her powers were limited. As a result, the extent of her abilities to produce constant thrills as an evil spirit resulted in the deaths of those around us. Perhaps at the ritual we performed as a class, we managed to summon a real god. This was a difficult feat for any amateur, but maybe the sake was just that delicious, and so it worked. When this real god saw the evil spirit trying to become one, it then banished her to hell. The reason the candles bent was because of the resistance of the evil spirit. These were the head priest's thoughts on the matter anyway. We went on to lead a peaceful school life, and then we graduated. As for the popular guy, people looked at him coldly, but Matsuzaka said, "If we bully him even once, then it will be difficult to say that we've led a peaceful school life." And so, there was no bullying. Even though Matsuzaka was the head of the science club, this incident propelled him to a more religious career instead. Apparently, he couldn't bear the fact we called so many places for an exorcism, and everybody refused to help. "I want to extend a hand and help out anyone who needs it," he said smoothly. I went to junior college after high school, and now I work as a government worker for the city. Of course, I now lead a peaceful working life. I don't talk to Matsuzaka much anymore, but when I went to visit Hosoki's grave last week, I bumped into him there, and we reminisced about things. That's why I thought about starting this thread. What we lost during this incident was just so great. But for the classmates we lost, the teacher we lost, and the 3 years of our lives that we lost, I plan to live my life to the fullest for all of them. For those who made it this far, thank you for reading. I'm about to go to sleep, but if you have any questions that I can answer, please feel free to write them down. And everyone, make sure to enjoy life. So what did you think of this week's story? You can let me know on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Tara A. Devlin. You can also join our Patreon for early access and exclusive bonus episodes at patreon.com/Tara A. Devlin. Again, I'd like to say a big thank you to all of our patrons for making this episode possible. You guys are awesome. I also have one last announcement for this week. My latest horror novel, Kage, comes out next week on Thursday, November 15th. This is a standalone Japanese horror novel that follows 2 young women and a dark shadow, the Kage of the title, who is pursuing them. You can pre-order it on Amazon right now for just 99 cents. But this price is limited until November 15th, so don't miss out. Thanks guys, and I'll see you again next time for even more Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.